This story takes place in Seoul, South Korea over a decade ago. There is a woman who is living in a very upscale section of Seoul in a massive high-rise of apartment buildings. The woman is a stay-at-home mom, so her day is usually filled with taking care of her daughter. And they would often go out together and go to the park, go grocery shopping, and things like this. And on this one particular day, they had been out together and they were coming back to the apartment. And when you walk into the building, you go through the lobby, and then the elevators are back at the end of the lobby. She enters the elevator and walks in, and as soon as she walks in, she realizes that there is this man who was already in the elevator. And the man is just standing in the corner. He has a yellow raincoat on and a matching hat for the raincoat. He's looking down, and the hat is kind of pulled down over his face, so she can't even see his face. She immediately feels a bit uncomfortable, but by this point, she had already pressed the floor button, and the doors were beginning to close. A few things struck her as odd. Obviously, the fact that this man is apparently concealing his face is strange. 2, he's wearing a raincoat when it wasn't even raining outside. And 3, when she got on the elevator and she pushed the button for her floor, she noticed that none of the other buttons were illuminated. So whoever this man was, he had been standing on the elevator, but he had not pushed a button to go to a particular floor. So she's feeling extremely uneasy, and she kind of puts her arm around her daughter and sort of pushes her over to the side so that she would be in between this man to one side and her daughter to the other side. And it was the longest elevator ride of her life, and she just cannot wait to get off of the floor. And the whole time this man is not saying anything, but then she realizes, what if he gets off on the same floor that I do? And she comes up with a quick plan. She gets out her cell phone and she pretends that she just got a call from her husband. And she says, "Oh yeah, we're in the elevator right now. We're coming up. Do you want to open the door for us?" Kind of trying to give the impression that right on this floor is going to be her husband and he's going to be waiting for her. Finally, she gets up to her floor. The door's open. And she grabs her daughter by the wrist and starts leading her down the hallway. And she's looking behind her, and sure enough, this man in the yellow raincoat has exited the elevator, and he's slowly walking his way down the hall in the direction that she's going. Now she's starting to panic, and she's trying not to just break for it and run for the door because she's worried that if she just starts running, it's going to cause this man that's behind her to start chasing after her. And she continues to pretend like she's on the phone with her husband and saying, "Oh yeah, we're coming down the hall right now. I'll see you in just a minute." But of course, her husband is not there. He's at work. So once she gets to that door, it's only going to be her daughter, and this man in the yellow raincoat. She gets to the door and she starts saying, "Okay, honey, we're here. Can you open the door?" And she says it very loud, hoping that this man will hear her and think that the husband's just on the other side of the door. He better get out of here. But it looks like he's not buying it. Now, to get into her apartment, there was a little keypad that you had to enter the code. And so slyly, without giving away that she's the one entering it, she starts trying to enter the code. But as soon as this man sees this, he probably realized that that phone call was nothing but a ruse, that there was no husband. She looks up, and he is now sprinting down the hallway in her direction. As fast as she can, she punches in the keypad, she hears a beep, it opens up, she swings the door open, she throws her daughter inside, she gets in there, she grabs the door, and she starts closing it just as the man is closing in. He's reaching out his arm to try to block the door from closing and only misses by inches before the door closes and she locks it. She had just barely made it into her apartment. If she was a split second slower, this man would have blocked the door and he would have forced his way into the apartment. She looks through the peephole and she can see the man slowly going back toward the elevator. She's completely freaked out. She lived in an extremely safe area, and something like this was totally unheard of. Months later, she's sitting at home, she's watching TV, and the news is on, and she suddenly sees the same face that she had seen that day chasing her down the hallway. It was the man in the yellow raincoat. It turns out his name was Yu Young-chul, and he was actually a serial killer. She realizes that both her and her daughter were only a split second away from becoming victims of this serial killer. A man is stationed in Oregon as a military policeman for the Air Force. He worked on an Air Force base, but in his free time, he loved exploring the wilderness. Oregon has these massive forests that just go on for miles and miles and miles. He had a good friend named Nick, and one of their favorite activities was they would get in Nick's truck and they would go out into these logging roads that just went on forever. There was a maze of these logging roads that crisscrossed all over the wilderness, and they loved to just go out and get lost in the woods and then find their way back. It was really exhilarating for them, and it was so peaceful and beautiful out there. One day, they get in Nick's truck to go out for their favorite activity, and they find a logging road that they had never been down before, and so they start making their way deeper and deeper into the wilderness. After driving for probably an hour through these crisscrossing logging roads, they kind of come around a bend, and they find this huge meadow. And it was really unusual to find a meadow like this because these forests just went on forever. So to find a meadow like this was a really cool find. And so Nick drives his truck into the meadow, and they're just kind of looking around and being amazed by how beautiful it is. The meadow was perfectly flat, and then on all sides was just this dense forest. As they're surveying the meadow, they see on the far side of the meadow something that catches their eye. They start driving a little bit closer, and they see that it's this big picnic table that had been painted orange. And it strikes them as odd because this is not a campground, right? This is not even close to any hiking trails. This is all logging territory. So generally the only people that even come out here are loggers. They are miles and miles away from the nearest town, the nearest campground, the nearest hiking trail. They're in the middle of nowhere, and they see this weird picnic table. They drive up to it and they get out of the truck. And as they approach the picnic table, they realize that not only is it painted in this bright orange color, but also the picnic table is huge. It's so huge that it's almost unusable. The man was not particularly tall, and when he walked up to the picnic table, the bench of the picnic table came up to his chest. And they're looking at each other and just saying, what the heck is this? Why would somebody build this massive picnic table? And why would it be out here in the middle of nowhere? They continue looking around, kind of surveying the area, when something else catches their eye. Not too far from where they are, kind of nestled in the tree line, nearly out of view, is this tent. The man gets a sinking feeling in his gut about this. He had spent plenty of time in the woods, and seeing a tent was not all that unusual when you're near a hiking trail, or when you're in a national forest, or when you're near a campground. But they are so far from civilization, and they are so far from the nearest hiking trail, that somebody who would put a tent out here definitely does not want to be found. Now, his friend Nick was kind of a gung-ho sort of guy, and so Nick is kind of goading him on, saying, yeah, go check out that tent, go see what's in there. And he's saying, look, I'm not really comfortable doing that. We're so far out in the middle of nowhere. If somebody's out here, they don't want us to bother them. I think we should get back in the truck and maybe get out of here. And besides, it looks like a storm is going to roll in pretty soon. And Nick is kind of going through all the reasons why they should go and check out this tent. And one of the reasons that came up was, what if somebody passed away and they're inside of the tent? The man was a big-time hiker and camper, and so the idea that somebody could pass away in the wilderness and never be found and never give their family closure was something that really disturbed him. So because of this, he felt obligated to go and at least look. And it's probably nothing, but worst case scenario, somebody's passed away in there and we can at least call the authorities and make sure that their body gets back to their family. But he says, I am not going to just walk all the way over there by myself. And so they come up with a plan. Nick is going to take his truck and he's going to kind of back it up against the tree line as the man goes and looks at this tent, so that if anything goes wrong, he can run right back to Nick's truck and they can take off. So they hop back in the truck and Nick does just that. He backs up against the tree line and the man gets out and starts approaching this tent very cautiously and very reluctantly. As he gets closer, he sees another strange thing. Strewn about the campsite, all around the tent, are dozens and dozens of backpacks. When he sees this, he knows something is definitely not right here. He's also looking around the campsite. He doesn't see any evidence that somebody has ever had a fire out here. He sees no stones in a circle. He sees no stockpile of firewood. He sees no supplies. It's just this tent and dozens of backpacks. And Nick is still goading him on and saying, go, look in the tent, see what's in there. And he's just saying, God, okay, I'll go. So he walks through the campsite over these backpacks. He gets to the tent. He unzips the flap. He looks inside. Fortunately, there's no body in the tent. But what he does see is more backpacks and then a huge stack of women's clothing. Now he knows something is extremely wrong here. Just as he's seeing this, he hears Nick from the truck screaming, we gotta get the hell out of here right now. Get back in the truck. We've gotta go. And he doesn't need any more encouragement than that. He starts sprinting back to the truck, and as he's getting into the passenger side of the truck, he looks out across the meadow and he sees a car. A car has come down that logging road. He said it looked like a very old Ford Taurus, and it was trying to position itself in the path so that nobody could get in and nobody could get out. As soon as he closes the door, Nick slams on the gas and they start booking it across this meadow toward that car. As they're approaching it, he can see two men inside, one in the driver's seat and one in the passenger seat. And it's very clear that they're trying to position themselves so that Nick can't get his truck around them and back onto the road. Now Nick is going full steam ahead directly at this car. And he's thinking that Nick is going to crash into them. But fortunately, at the very last second, Nick makes a little maneuver, gets around the truck, gets back onto the road. As they're passing the car, he's looking over at them and he sees what he thinks is a third person. But this person is in a very awkward position. They're in the back, kind of above the seats and pressed up against the back window of the car. And he just says, just drive, man. We just got to get out of here. And Nick drives like an absolute maniac down these logging roads until finally they get back out onto the main road. Even then, he doesn't slow down until he's absolutely positive that these men are not behind him and they're not going to catch up. Now, they don't know what those men were doing, but they know that they were up to no good. So they decide they need to call the police about it. They call the police, they explain what happened, and the police do go out and check it out. They say that they did find the picnic table, so they know that they were in the right spot, but there was no sign of anyone else. The tent was gone, all the backpacks were gone, and the car wasn't there. He has no idea what that all was about, but is pretty confident that whatever it was not good.